Heads up, this podcast isn't therapy. It's bold, blunt, and irreverent, but it's not a substitute for professional help. Full disclaimer is in the blurb below. Hi, welcome back to Soul Path Alchemy. So today we're going to step back into the uncomfortable truth about emotional cheating in part 2. As I said before, this is not the dramatic kind of cheating, it's the quiet kind, the kind that happens in fantasy, or the kind that happens in text glances. It's quite low key and people pretend that it doesn't count. So today I'm going to take you through 9 different reasons people do this, and I'll cover the soulmate fantasy as well. Okay, let's begin with quite a big one. Lack of internal boundaries. So this is the one no one wants to admit because it doesn't come with a villain story. There's no my partner stopped loving me or I was emotionally neglected. This one is quieter. It's more confronting. It lives inside the person themselves. Some people simply don't have the internal boundaries to hold emotional closeness without letting it spill into fantasy, entitlement, or flirtation. They don't know how to experience intimacy without interpreting it as permission. So when someone laughs at their jokes, listens deeply, or shares a vulnerable moment, they don't clock that as human connection. They clock it as something special, something theirs. This often stems from poor modeling growing up. No one taught them how to maintain closeness without confusing it with romantic charge. So they let themselves lean in. They text a little more, they joke a little differently, they offer late night support that somehow isn't offered to their partner. They tell themselves it's nothing, but it is nothing. It's leakage. It's emotional energy being redirected without consent and without awareness of the damage it's doing. So internal boundaries are not about being cold. They're about knowing the difference between connection and consumption. So the third reason is ego gratification. Not every emotional affair is born from loneliness. Some are born from vanity, from the itch of wanting to be admired again. Not loved, admired, revered. They want to feel special, sparkly, insert whatever. This kind of emotional cheating is not seeking intimacy. It's seeking a mirror. Someone who reflects back a shinier, more interesting version of the self. These are the folk who say, "Oh, they make me feel alive again. Around them I feel seen." Translation: I feel important and I like who I am when I'm with them. So people caught in this pattern often aren't trying to destroy their relationship. In fact, they might still love their partner, but it's a love dulled by familiarity. The ego, however, is starving for stimulation, and the moment someone lights up around them, they begin chasing that glow like it's oxygen. This kind of emotional cheating is fundamentally selfish. It's not about connection. It's about supply. A steady drip feed of validation dressed up as a deep emotional bond. The other person becomes a tool, a mirror, a mood boost. In fact, as I said previously, they often don't even know they're being used. The tragedy, it's never enough. The more ego gratification they get, the more they crave. The more they crave, the more they withdraw from the grounded, imperfect, real connection they already have, until they're addicted to the high of being seen, but incapable of being known. Ask yourself this: if the relationship was meeting your needs, you wouldn't be looking elsewhere. So here's the part that no couple wants to say out loud. If someone is emotionally cheating, something in the relationship isn't working. That doesn't mean the cheater is justified, but it does mean something's missing. And if you don't face that, you'll either moralize the behavior without healing the root, or worse, repeat it in the next relationship. People don't go looking for ego strokes outside of the relationship unless they're starving inside it. Maybe they feel invisible. Maybe they feel stuck in a role. Maybe they've been dismissed, shut down, or chronically underacknowledged. But whatever the specifics, there's a truth here. If your emotional, psychological, or erotic needs are being met, you don't need to play pretend elsewhere. This isn't about blaming your partner. It's about holding yourself accountable for naming what's not working before you start trying to supplement in secret. If you're getting your self-worth, your vitality, or your emotional depth met somewhere else, that's a sign that your relationship either needs to evolve or possibly be grieved. You see, you cannot be emotionally faithful if you're emotionally unfed. But the adult response isn't to look elsewhere. The adult response is to speak up, even if it rocks the boat, even if it risks rupture, because nothing ruptures a relationship faster than letting your needs go unmet, and then pretending it's a complete mystery when your heart wanders off to find them. So most emotional cheating doesn't happen in a vacuum. It grows in the space where two people have stopped meeting each other. Remember, relationships are co-created, and when needs aren't being met, it's rarely one person's fault. But here's the thing, wouldn't it be better, braver even, to turn towards your partner and say, something's missing, I don't feel seen, I don't feel wanted. Can we sit down and look at this together? Instead, too many people retreat into fantasy. They script better conversations in their head, imagine more thrilling sex, or build emotional closeness with someone else, all while never giving their partner a real chance to show up. Emotional cheating becomes the coward's way out. Instead of having an adult conversation, and that conversation, difficult as it may be, is the only one that offers a path back to something real. So then we have another reason, the boredom and emotional numbness one. So not every emotional affair is a grand passion. Some of them are just, well, a way to feel something, anything, a little spark in the middle of the grey. This kind of emotional cheating is often driven by numbness, not desire. The person isn't even sure they want the other person. They just know they don't feel much of anything anymore, and this connection gives them a flicker of aliveness. It's not about love, it's about relief. The messages become a hit of dopamine, the in-jokes feel like a break from the grind, the secrecy becomes its own kind of high. But underneath all of that is emotional flatlining. This person has lost access to vitality, and instead of doing the hard internal work of thawing out, they use someone else to jumpstart it. This is common in long-term relationships where routine has replaced risk and connection has given way to co-management of kinds. The emotional cheating is a symptom, not of a bad relationship necessarily, but of someone who stopped feeling present in their own life. And the real tragedy? The more they lean into the emotional affair for a stimulation, the more numb they become in their actual relationship, because now they're split. A part of them lives elsewhere, and that part is the one that used to be available for intimacy, curiosity, conversations, and growth, and it's absconded. So no, boredom isn't an excuse, but it's a warning bell. And if you find yourself lighting up more in your messages with someone else than you do in real relationship, it might be time to ask yourself, not what's wrong with your partner, but what part of you has gone offline. Because remember, you cannot give to anyone else what you have not cultivated and given to yourself. Really think about that for a few moments. And now we come to the fifth reason. The avoidance of deeper intimacy. This one's very sneaky because it looks like closeness on the surface. You see, they're confiding in someone, they're opening up, they're being vulnerable. Here's the truth. It's pseudo-intimacy. You can't hothouse intimacy. It takes time. Connection that feels deep takes a long time. Connection that is integratively deep takes a long time. But pseudo-intimacy, on the surface it feels this way, but it's actually just a decoy. It's intimacy that's been outsourced to avoid the terrifying closeness of real partnership. So when emotional cheating is rooted in avoidance, the person isn't running towards the new connection, they're running away from the depths of the one they're already in. You see, real intimacy in long-term relationship demands something confronting. Accountability, emotional transparency. The willingness to be seen all the way through, good, bad, ugly, and indifferent. And that level of exposure can be terrifying, especially for people with avoidant attachment patterns, trauma histories, or a deep fear of engulfment. So, what do they do instead? They build safe intimacy. And I say that in parentheses. So, it's like fake safe intimacy, intimacy with someone who doesn't have full access to them. It's with somebody they're not building a life with, somebody who doesn't mirror their flaws or see them on bad days. It's emotional tourism. You visit, you enjoy the sights, you keep your bags packed. And meanwhile, your partner, the one who actually wants to go the distance, is left standing at the gates and wondering why you never fully arrived. And now we come to resentment and passive aggression. So this form of emotional cheating doesn't come from longing, it comes from punishment. It's not about closeness with someone new, it's about distance from someone old. It's weaponized withdrawal. The person isn't cheating emotionally because they're desperate to feel loved. They're doing it to express rage that they won't admit. Perhaps rage about being dismissed, rage about feeling underappreciated, rage about things that have been swept under the rug time and time again, perhaps for years. But instead of confronting it directly, they leak it. They start confiding in someone else. They smile more with someone else. They come alive in front of someone else. And it's not subtle. They want their partner to notice. They want them to feel it. It's as if they're saying, maybe if you'd been paying attention, I wouldn't be talking to someone else. And this kind of emotional cheating is often revenge disguised as connection. The person won't admit they're angry, won't say they're hurt, but they won't leave either. But they'll bleed their energy elsewhere just enough to be noticed. It's a form of emotional protest, where instead of saying I'm unhappy and being transparent, upfront, and honest, they behave in a way that silently says, you didn't value me, so now someone else will. But here's the bitter truth, they're only hurting themselves, no one wins, and the partner will also feel betrayed. The person cheating emotionally is also going to feel incredibly ashamed. And the new emotional connection becomes entangled in unresolved resentment that has nothing to do with them. And again, they may not even know. So this is also one of the most difficult forms of emotional cheating to come back from because it erodes trust at the psychological level. It tells your partner, well, you won't even tell me when you're hurt, you'll just disappear in plain sight. And that kind of silence, it echoes louder than any argument. If something hurts, you have to say it. If you feel unseen, you have to name it. Emotional maturity begins with owning your experience and bringing it to your partner's attention, not outsourcing it to someone else as a silent protest. Real intimacy is not about avoiding conflict. It's about accurate, all-encompassing communication. Statements such as, this is how I feel, fill in the blank. This is what I need, insert what you wish to say. This is what's not working, and so on and so forth. Yeah, these conversations can be difficult and clunky. They also can lead to tears. They might rock the dynamic, but they're the only way to actually stay in truthful relationship, not just coexist while quietly bleeding out on the side. You see, resentment is what builds when truth is withheld, and emotional cheating is what often follows when someone stops using their voice. And now we come to immaturity and entitlement. This version of emotional cheating comes with an inner script that sounds something like this. Oh, I deserve this. It's not that serious. Well, my needs aren't being met, so I'm allowed to look elsewhere. I'm only human. Immaturity says I want what I want without having to account for how it affects anyone else. Entitlement says, well, my partner isn't perfect, so I therefore get a free pass to break the rules. Together, they create a mindset where emotional fidelity feels optional, like something reserved for people who are completely satisfied, never bored, never annoyed, never tired, which is, of course, no one. Here's the hard truth. You don't have to sleep with someone to betray the relationship. You really don't. So this is the kind of emotional cheating where the person convinces themselves they're doing nothing wrong because there's no sex, no physical touch, no proof. They cling to technicalities like a child arguing that they didn't technically eat dessert because they only ate all the icing. If you're building a private emotional world with someone else and you know your partner would not be okay with it, wake up. You've already crossed the line. So people with emotional immaturity often have a fantasy that they're the exception, that their situation is different, that they're misunderstood, that they're just connecting and everyone else is overreacting. Really? Really? But really, they're just unwilling to do the grown-up thing, to look at the impact of their behavior and to take responsibility for it. And here is the grand paradox. They want the freedom of a single person with the safety of a committed partner. They want to chase the spark and novelty without facing consequence or repair. But emotional depth isn't a buffet. You don't get to sample elsewhere when the plate you've committed to starts feeling bland. Emotionally mature people do something radical. They stay present when things get uncomfortable. They feel the boredom, the restlessness, the disappointment. They don't immediately try to fix it by pulling someone else into their orbit. They can hold paradox. I love my partner and I feel disconnected right now. I'm grateful for this relationship, but I'm also really struggling in it right now. And most importantly, they know how to communicate that complexity clearly, compassionately, and without creating a third party to carry what they won't say. Mature people have boundaries, not because they're unfeeling, but because they understand the cost of unexamined desire. They refuse to let the spark take off with someone else because they're committed to tending the fire where they are. And now we have addiction to the spark. So these are the people who aren't looking for depth. They're chasing charge, emotional charges everywhere. That heady mix of attention, novelty, ego strokes, and not quite attainable desire. This kind of emotional cheating isn't about unmet needs. It's about dopamine dependency. They crave the rush of newness, the little hit that they get when someone responds to their text, the buzz of knowing someone's thinking about them, the fantasy of what could be. If only things were different. And these people say things like this. I haven't felt this alive in years. I forgot what it felt like to be excited. Oh, this is so different. It's not about sex. But really it is about sex. Or more accurately, about sexual energy without responsibility. The titillation of closeness without consequence. It's the energetic equivalent of a sugar high. Fast, addictive, and followed by an emotional crash. People addicted to the spark often mistake emotional cheating for true connection because they feel more themselves in the presence of that new person. But no, they're not more themselves. They're just experiencing an unburdened version of themselves with no chores, no history, no flaws on display. And here's the truth they don't want to hear. If you can only feel alive in someone else's fantasy, you've stopped doing the real work of staying alive in your own inner world and your relationship. Emotional spark addiction is a form of escapism, and if you keep chasing it, it will burn down every relationship you try to build. This one seems to run in sequence, so there's like a domino effect, person after person after person. And now I'm going to look at reenactment, one of my favorite topics, and trauma patterns. So not all emotional cheating is about what's happening now. Sometimes it's about what happened then, long before the relationship ever began. This is where trauma walks in dressed as chemistry, and where someone finds themselves drawn again and again and again to unavailable people, fantasy people, high stakes dynamics, emotional triangles, Not because they're selfish, but because something in their nervous system equates inconsistency with love. So these are the people who confuse longing for connection, who find intensity more bearable than vulnerability, who replay old attachment wounds in new emotional entanglements. They were ignored as children. Now they crave being chosen. They lived in chaotic homes. Now they're calm with chaos and terrified by stability. They were only loved when needed, and now they're drawn to broken birds and emotional damsels or men in distress, either or. It's like it's equal. So emotional cheating becomes a kind of a reenactment ritual, a chance to fix the past, to finally be enough, to win the attention that they were once denied. But you see, the past doesn't heal that way, it just repeats until someone chooses to name the pattern and interrupt it. So, this is also where emotional triangulation becomes a familiar wound. If love was always shared, scarce, or threatened in childhood, if you were a mediator or the replacement or the ghost of someone else, then emotional cheating isn't just betrayal, it's home. And here's the soul stinging truth: repetition doesn't heal trauma, it just keeps you busy inside of it. Until you do the deeper work, the grief work, the self worth work, you'll keep mistaking these familiar wounds for love stories. But unfortunately, they're not. And sometimes emotional cheating isn't just a personal pattern, it's a generational one. If you grew up watching emotional affairs play out silently, perhaps watching a flirtatious family friend or the one parent who always confided in someone else that wasn't either your mother or your father, or there was a quiet emotional distance that was never named, then triangulated love becomes familiar. You inherit a blueprint that says, well, connection is complicated and fidelity is emotional, not just physical. You're not trying to repeat it, but your nervous system recognizes the shape of it and calls it normal. And when emotional chaos is familiar, people don't just tolerate it, they romanticize it. They assign meaning to it. Oh, it's fate, we're soulmates, I can't explain it, I just feel pulled towards them. But here's the truth: that magnetic pull, it's not always fate. Sometimes it's your wound trying to complete a story it never got to finish. Trauma-based attraction doesn't feel dangerous, it feels important. It's intensity masquerading as significance. And it's one of the most convincing lies people tell themselves to stay stuck in patterns that are quietly breaking them. And this takes me to the soulmate fantasy. Yes, the most romantic lie individuals will ever tell themselves. The soulmate, the one who just gets you, the one you had an instant connection with, the one who showed up right when your relationship started to feel a little bit flat. How opportunistic or how poetic. Here's the problem: calling someone your soulmate while you're still in a committed relationship isn't romantic, it's delusional, with the side of spiritual fraud. You're not in a fated union, you're in a well-lit emotional affair. It's not synchronicity, it's sabotage with candles and incense. People invoke the soulmate card to dodge accountability. They call their unresolved longing destiny because it's easier than saying, well, I didn't do the emotional work in my relationship, so I outsourced it to someone who reflects back the version of me that I miss being. And let's be honest, soulmates don't show up to steer you away from your commitments. They show up to sharpen you, to challenge you, to make you grow. If someone was a genuine soulmate, they would not like you deleting messages, gaslighting your partner, or journaling about, I don't know, angel cards or numbers or whatever. So the soulmate narrative is often a kind of shiny spiritual sticker that people slap over emotional immaturity. And it goes hand in hand with avoidant attachment. It's just giving it basically different branding. If it's real love, then end what you're in and show up with integrity. Otherwise, you're not soulmates. And if the other individual is a true soulmate, there's no way they're going to mess around with somebody who's in a relationship. They just would not do it. So it's about getting real and perhaps facing that you're just in a high functioning avoidance loop that smells perhaps like, I don't know, jasmine candles. So the final reason is incomplete endings. So some emotional cheating isn't about what's new, it's about what was never finished. This is the kind of affair that begins when someone reaches back to an old flame, a just friends now ex, a person from the past who never got full closure. Perhaps they were dumped by them. The connection doesn't have to be fresh, it could be, but usually it's not. It's kind of the one who got away kind of energy. And it's always familiar. It's rooted in the ache of something unresolved, something romanticized, something never quite laid to rest. And suddenly the mind starts whispering, oh, what if? Maybe we got the timing wrong. Oh, I just need to talk to them for peace. But it's not about peace, it's about keeping the thread alive. Incomplete endings create emotional doorways that never fully close. And when life gets hard, when the current relationship feels dull, stressful, or highly emotionally charged or emotionally dry, that door becomes a portal to fantasy. A curated, polished memory of how it once felt to be wanted, understood, and adored. The past becomes a refuge, a shortcut to identity, a way to bypass the messiness of the present by slipping into a story that has already died, but it felt good once. And here's what no one says out loud. If a connection was really meant to last, it wouldn't require secrecy to survive. If it was the right person and the wrong time, the right time would never involve betrayal. If it brings you back to life, it should also bring you back to honor, not avoidance. And if you need someone else to keep your past alive, you haven't really grieved yet. So maybe you've been the one who emotionally cheated, or maybe you've been the one who felt something slipping but couldn't prove it. Or maybe you're caught in the middle, not knowing you were the screen someone else was projecting onto. Whatever your role, one thing is clear. Emotional cheating isn't just about what happened, it's about what was avoided. The conversations that weren't had, the needs that weren't voiced, the truths that were too uncomfortable to name. So they got rerouted into fantasy. But fantasy isn't intimacy, and validation isn't connection, and attention, no matter how intoxicating, is not the same as being known. So sit, reflect. If any of this applies to you, tell yourself the truth. The truth will always set you free. That's where repair begins. So you've been listening to Soul Path Alchemy, where we turn raw truth into clarity one episode at a time. If this stirred something in you, stay with it. If it brought someone to mind, trust the nudge and pass this episode on. I'm Annie O'Brien. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode tomorrow. In the meantime, have a really great day.